Asian origin, but mostly I'm Scottish, Northern Irish. I now live on Coast Salish territory in British Columbia, but today, in this place, we are gathered in the traditional territory of the Kumeyaay people. And so I just want to start by us all remembering that North America is native land, that we're all on native land in every moment, on every day, and it's really important to know where you are and to give thanks to the people that originated here. So I have an unusual career. I've done weird things. I spent 2 years of my life going to jail for Greenpeace every 2 weeks. Highlighted that was being chained by a kryptonite lock at the throat to a vessel that was heading to the Arctic Wildlife Refuge to explore, and it never left the harbor. So I got really good at no. I come from the land of no in origin. I needed no. It was part of my work, my healing work in the world as a woman. I needed to really learn how to be fierce in no before I could get to yes. But then I got really hungry for yes. My soul needed the migration to yes. And I spent 10 years saying yes and trying to get other people to say yes to carbon taxes. I talked about carbon taxes for a decade. And when the BC government passed the carbon tax in British Columbia, I was done. I was profoundly and spiritually done talking about taxes. But for many reasons that you can well imagine. But I got really excited about the space that the carbon tax opened up, and I really saw my own inner entrepreneur kind of come to life, because the space for clean energy, the space for community-owned clean energy, just kind of grabbed me, and it was like being hooked to a fast train, and that's how I've spent the last kind of 5 or 7 years of my life, which is why I haven't been at SVN. Sorry, Deb. But I had great mentors along the way, people like Joel Solomon, the Ashoka Foundation, many people from the SVN network who have really built me, held me. I spent a summer at the Unreasonable Institute in 2011, which was life-changing, really learning how to accelerate and grow social ventures. But I come from Canada, which is a place I've always been really proud of. I've always been really proud of universal healthcare. I've been proud that Canada was a really instrumental role in inventing peacekeeping in the world. That was my sense of my country. And then recently we elected a government that has really started to change that. Canada is being dismantled, piece by piece, system by system, infrastructure by infrastructure. It's not just the tar sands, which are maybe the greatest blight on our reputation in the world, but the treatment of Indigenous people in Canada has never been more atrocious. But there's an upside. I promised Libba that I wouldn't be a downer, so I'm not gonna wax on about the sinking of Canada. There's a rising of Canada that's happening right now. The I Don't Know More movement. How many people have followed I Don't Know More in the room? So I Don't Know More, a movement created by women at the kitchen table. Non-Native and Native women got together and said, enough, right? Enough. We're not going to watch. We're not going to stand by idly. We're going to transform this country. We're going to take back our power. And I Don't Know More is this integrated movement that started in Canada and now is spreading globally. And watch for it. Because I think the next iteration of I Don't Know More is going to be I Don't Know More energy for change meets social enterprise and the reinvention of economies. That's where I Don't Know More, I think, is starting to ground and land. And there's a bunch of us that are really trying to push it that way. So I'm going to take on a bit of a tour of places. But before I do, I want to talk about my inspiration for the work of sort of this phase of my life. I read Blessed Unrest a bunch of years ago, and I had a big experience. I felt like I was looking for that big to-do list. What are the 3 things that I want my life to be about? What are the 3 things I have to do so that I can feel like I'm a good elder, so that I can die at peace? What are those 3 things? And I decided these are my 3 things. 1, I have to work to end the atrocious gap between rich and poor in North America and around the world. It morally offends me that we just watch as the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, and we just accept that that's just the way it is. It's not the way it is. It's not the way it has to be. So we have to address global poverty, 1. 2, climate change. We have to arrest climate change head on. We are the generation that makes this decision. Do we pretend that climate change isn't happening and bury our heads in the sand, or do we rise? Do we really take on that responsibility? Other generations ended slavery. Other generations brought the vote to women. We have to stop climate change. And then 3, this is the big one for me. Here's the big one. 3, we have to restore the rightful place of indigenous wisdom. You know, people who lived for 10,000 years without trashing the joint, they know something that we all need to know right now. And so there's a humbling, right? We have to humble ourselves. We have to learn to respect people who know how to live without peeing in the drinking water, who know how to live with respect for animals and nature, who know how to honor the ancestors and provide for the children. And so that's the big 3 for me. I think this piece of art, it's sort of a collective kind of street art piece from actually an artist in Alberta named Gavin Renwick. And you know, this idea of indigenizing, we focused for a really long time on bringing modern economics to indigenous communities. But what we really need to do is we need to indigenize the modern economy. And I think that's what I'm really going to talk about for the rest of this time is what's it look like to indigenize? What do we need to do in order to indigenize the world? So I'm going to take you to Scotland. Surprise, surprise. My first example of indigenization is Scotland. But this is the Isle of Egg. It's an island that was owned by a bunch of rich people for many generations. One guy used to reenact World War II and fly the swastika over his manor house. And the local community just found him and this idea of wealthy nobles owning their home outrageous. And so when the island went up for sale, they bought it. But he didn't have any money to start with. They crowdsourced 1.5 million pounds from 10,000 people, right? The woman who administered this had never seen a spreadsheet when she started. She kept the ledger with pen and paper. They raised the money, they bought their island, then they put in clean energy infrastructure. They're powered 90% by clean energy, sun, wind, water. But most radically, they set a cap for every house and every business. They decided they were going to live within their means. They figured out what was the energy potential they could afford, what was the amount of energy they could generate, and then they consensus decision decided that everybody was going to live within 5 kilowatts as a house and 10 kilowatts as a business. So I think the Isle of Egg is one of the most radical examples. But they're culturally trying to indigenize. They're really spending time with their elders. They're talking about deep Scottish ancestry in a way that's really beautiful. Bolivia. So Evo Morales, one of the only indigenous leaders that actually runs a country in the world, enshrined the rights of nature into their constitution, banned GMOs, and kicked out Coca-Cola. So I would argue this is a nation, not just a community, but a nation that's re-indigenizing. I believe that, unlike the Harvard Business Review, who tends to portray disruptive innovators as smarty-pants white boys in Silicon Valley, and I'm sure there are some of those, I believe that the really disruptive people on the planet are people who have been left out. The really disruptive ones are women, they're indigenous people, and they're poor people. Because if you've been smashed by the economy as it is, you are motivated to be creative to change it. If you built the economy like it is, it's kind of hard for you. It's hard for you to see how to really fundamentally mess and change and do the disruptive work that brings about change. So I would argue that dumpster divers and welfare moms and people who have been incarcerated, people who live on reserves and people in inner cities, those are the disruptive ones. And I think that we need them more than they need us, right? We need to know, we need their intel, we need their creativity, their fire, their spark, their motivation. And that's where the sea change comes from, in my opinion. The transformation that will make the world into the one we want to leave behind when we are really in our eldership. It's that world that provides and that draws this greater intelligence from communities that have been left out and trashed. And this is one of my favorite businesses on the planet, Pakistan. This bag was made by girls that formerly worked on the looms for 14 hours a day. Their families are refugees, so they need the money. So this company, I know you all want this bag, and I'll tell you about how to get it. I will, don't worry, I'll tell you about how to get it. Everybody wants this bag. So they take the girls from the looms, they put them in school, they learn reading, writing, they learn business skills, and they learn exquisite high-end embroidery from their culture. Because they have thousands of years of this beautiful tradition of creating these patterns. These patterns are deeply, deeply, deeply part of their culture. And so for me, this is a company example of a cultural entrepreneur. I think that is the new wave. It's the new piece that we need to really care about in sustainability. It's the new wave in business that really, really matters. And I think this is one of the best examples. So see me later, and I'll tell you all about how to get one. This is my posse. I get to play with some really awesome folks. More women than men, more people with indigenous heritage than not, more people of color than not, more people that are culture workers, artists, creatives, community development people, but also really smart, emotionally competent engineers. And they exist, and I know lots of them. And when you really work in the spaces between these folks, amazing things happen. So in essence, I run a hybrid. We're one part B corporation called First Power, which is a clean energy company, and we're one part charitable organization. The project that I'm going to talk about at the end of today is Sundrum, which is a project that actually teaches entrepreneurship through oral storytelling, through art, and through games, and inspires marginal youth to claim what they know about the world and be entrepreneurs. This is my favorite quote of life. So this guy in the corner, Louis Riel, he's the one kind of badass, hot character in Canadian history. There's one, he's it. I swear, I was a history major. I speak with some authority on this subject. So Louis Riel was the hero and is the hero of the Métis people. He wanted there to be a nation within Canada that recognized people who were both European and Indigenous heritage, had something unique to offer the world. And of course, he was hung as a rebel by the Canadian government. But he said this: "My people will sleep for 100 years, and when they wake up, it is the artists that will give them their spirit back." I believe that. I believe that we're not going to turn the channel on climate change with data and with science. I'm sorry, we're not. It's going to be because our souls and our spirits and everything in us, that we are going to rise to the heights that poets say we're capable of, that we're going to see the future the way artists see the future. It is our sensibilities. It is our sensory perception, our love of beauty, our love of the children. That is what will save us. And so, when a funky artist builds an energy company, all of a sudden the solar panels get turned into art canvases. So this is an example of a piece of art that we worked on with an interior Salish community. This is operating instructions, 3,000-year-old cave paintings about how to live. And this is what this community wanted to put on their solar panels. The elders, the artists in the community, the kids all got behind the project. This community doesn't just own their own energy infrastructure. They deployed it. They put the solar panels on the buildings, and their art marks it. And so, I think people should cry at the unveiling of solar panels. I think it should mean that much at this point in time. And damn it, I want to do projects where people cry. And so we're expanding what we do. We're not just working for Indigenous communities anymore. We're starting to work for marginalized communities. We're doing projects with government offices, corporate headquarters, because lots of people want to integrate art and energy, and we've learned a lot about how to do it with wind, how to do it with solar, how to really create projects that reach people. And then this is the love of my life. This is our depiction. This is a piece of art by Coast Salish artist Mark Gowdy. And this is our version of a sane economy. So, where does economy come from? It comes from the gifts of nature. It comes from the sun and the wind. It comes from fire. It comes from forests. It's looked over by the ancestors, and we owe this enormous debt to the people that came before us to honor the traditions. We're all of indigenous heritage. If we go back far enough, we all have cells in our bodies that remember how to be sane, right? It's important for us to remember that, not just Native people, all of us have that in our bodies. And then the inner circle is, the economy, is how do we make and take from the world and share and give back. And the inner circle is future generations. So it's this sense of economy mapped over time, an economy that is responsive to the culture, an economy that honors who we are as human beings. And this project, in essence, teaches youth how to transform into social entrepreneurs. The coolest thing we've done so far is we've just invented a game, a role-playing game, where youth come in cynical, they come in kind of shut down, economy what, entrepreneur, huh? And over the course of the game, they pick up tools. They start playing with money and mentors and models and assets, and they build on each other, and they create this business. And they walk out saying, hey, I didn't know business was so fun. I didn't know business was cool. I didn't know business could be about change. I didn't know business could be about values. I didn't know business could be about love. And then they put the pieces of the businesses they built together, and they see they just built a local economy. And so that's my challenge to all of us. How do we take what we know in this room, because we know a lot in this room about how to change the world. How do we take every hard, painful lesson we've learned, because everyone in business has gone through, the hell and back of it. How do we take that and empower those left out, those really brilliant, talented, creative young people in inner cities and on reserves that can be transformed into probably the biggest source of creative intel to save all of our behinds and to make the world beautiful. That's my challenge to all of us. We just launched an Indiegogo campaign this morning. If you're interested in learning more, come find me, because this should be a conversation, and I've taken up a lot of your time, so come and take up some of mine. Thank you very much.